Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for being here. This is really a great pleasure. I'm extremely happy to have been organizing this event on behalf of the Centro Internazionali as Deputy Director. We are, as you may have read already from the communicate, we are a partner, the Italian partner of the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine, which is a parliamentary initiative initiated at the House of Commons last May, and thanks to Roger Casale, who was a Labour MP in Britain, and is the president of the New Europeans, which is an organization for Europeans in the UK, and is also commendatore here in Italy. And also thanks, of course, to Javier Deralla, who's the co-promoter of this initiative. The initiative, I'm going to leave the floor to Roger in a while, but is pretty much an initiative of parliamentary diplomacy and to support Ukraine. But I'm going to leave the floor for that to Roger. Unfortunately, we won't have the president because he's also blocked. The president of the Centro Internazionali is also blocked in the central station due to the strikes. But we have Francesco, who's here as a panelist, and he's going to give some brief greetings on behalf of the Centro Internazionali as a director, executive director. So thank you very much. So I really want to stop it here, and I would like to leave the floor to Roger, who's going to introduce the initiative. You can just activate that one. Who's going to introduce the initiative and give his greetings as a promoter of the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much, Emanuele, and thank you to all our dear guests who are here. I'm delighted to see Onorevole Emanuele Lopefido, Filippo Senso Sensi in the audience, Francesco Cifarelli was wonderful, and our dear professor and other friends and representatives from the British Embassy. So we would have had more people here today if it wasn't for the Italian train strike. All of you know that there's Italian train strike, but I'm saying that for people who are going to be watching the recording of this event, so that they understand that. I always think the Italian school children must love strikes, but it's not all that helpful when you're trying to organize international events like this one. It would have prevented a number of people from coming to Rome for our event, and it would have prevented a number of people, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but it would also have prevented a number of people from coming to Rome to celebrate a special birthday today, because I believe that it is the birthday of our president today, Emanuele Riccio. So I think we should start off with it. And as well as being the first one to congratulate you, let me give you a copy of our book. It's a bit cheeky because it's a good promotion for our book, Defending Democracy and Human Rights. But I'm going to do it anyway because it's important, and you're important, and the work that you do is important.
Thank you so
much.
So
happy birthday, Emanuele,
thank you.
And thank you for all you've done
today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And let me also, on behalf of Westminster Alliance for Ukraine, welcome you all to this event. And just as Emanuele said, just take a moment or two to explain what it is. What is Westminster Alliance for Ukraine? We launched it in the House of Commons on the 13th of May this year with the help of a Labour MP called Alex Sobel, who is the chair of the all-party parliamentary group in the UK Parliament on Ukraine, and also Lord James Arbuthnot, who is a Conservative and a former Conservative Minister of Defence Procurement, actually, and Chairman of the Defence Committee. And we had representatives there from also from the Ukrainian Parliament, and Italian, French, German, Polish, UK. Why those 5 countries? Because they are the E5, the so-called E5, countries within the 31 countries that make up the coalition of the willing that have a stronger defence capability. And so what we want to do with the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine is to create primarily a network on a cross-party basis of members of parliament. So that's why it's terrific that we've got Emanuele and Filippo with us today, that can support the work of the coalition of the willing. And let's remember, the coalition of the willing The idea there is to continue to step up the military support for Ukraine, but and also to help Ukraine to develop its own capability and capacity. Although I have to say, I think we have an enormous amount to learn from Ukraine in terms of the ingenuity and the resilience that they've shown in the face of the Russian invasion. But also, very importantly, when peace does come, which we hope eventually it will, to underpin that with an ongoing commitment to make sure that that peace is then sustainable, and that would have a military component, but it also would have an economic component. And I would like to say, I think it should have, we'll hear from Zabir in a moment, it should have a civil society component, perhaps a local authority component, and I would even say a cultural component, because let's remember what Putin wants to do is not just to win territory in Ukraine. He wants to actually eradicate Ukraine from the face of the map. He wants to eradicate the memory, the belief in Ukraine from the face of the map. He wants to eradicate the love of freedom and democracy in the hearts of the Ukrainian people. And if he got the chance, he would probably like to do that with some of us in Europe as well. We're going to be hearing more about that later. But I do think this point about identity and about culture is very important too when we think about the future of Ukraine. And what I would also like to say is that I think that we can see, just as in the Second World War, I'm from Britain. I live between Britain and Italy, but the post-war settlement in Britain people didn't sit down in 1945 and start thinking about the National Health Service. The work on that was done in 1940, during the war, 1943. And I say that because what emerged as the post-war compromise was prepared while conflict was still ongoing. And I believe that that is the case today in Ukraine. The conflict is still ongoing, but we can start to see the new Ukraine, the future of Ukraine, the new Ukraine emerging now, and we can work on that together and we can contribute. And I would also like to say that for me, the future of Ukraine is the future of Europe. Because the front line of the conflict is not the border of Ukraine. The war is here with us in Europe now. I don't believe that we have woken up to that. Well, I'm sure everybody in this room has woken up to that fact, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But I don't believe that our societies have woken up to that and are really aware of the danger. And I think we all have a responsibility, not just our governments and our leaders, but us as citizens. I'm a citizen. And certainly parliamentarians, but also journalists and civil society leaders and so on, to wake us up in Europe, make us aware of the danger, help us to understand that we need to organise, and that's what we're trying to do with the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. We're trying to organise. There are many different initiatives in relation to Ukraine, and that's fine, and may they all be very successful. The particular value that we want to bring is to develop this network of parliamentarians. We're organising to develop this network of parliamentarians in the E5 because we want the parliamentarians, and supported by a network of journalists. We will also be talking to the Italian Association of Architects, who I actually met at a reception at the British ambassadors here in Rome on the eve of the Ukraine Recovery Conference, where we saw a mobilisation not just of politicians, but of business, of civil society, of the arts and culture to support Ukraine. So we want to organise to develop these networks. And I think what we want to do is get behind the idea of the coalition of the willing and say that's a good idea, it's a noble idea, it's a necessary idea, it's an important idea. And I said that a few moments ago, reminded us what the aims of the coalition of the willing are. But how do we go from ambition to reality? There's a very big gap. There's lots of things to do. And I think that's where MPs can be very helpful in terms of focusing the debate in Parliament, but also in mobilising public support. Because one of the things we're going to need to do is step up our defence expenditure in Europe at a time when many people are suffering from the cost of living crisis, when our public services are in dire need of extra resources. Where is this money going to come from? And people might say, well, why should we spend more money on defence if that's going to... Well, the answer is because our very existence is potentially at stake. And we're going to hear more about that from those who speak this morning. So thank you once again for being with us. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain what we're trying to do with the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. Thank you for being here to support it. Please continue to support it. So this is the Italian event. We're very grateful to Emanuele and to the Centro Studi Internazionali, who are our Italian partners, to the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung in Italy, who are supporting us today, to the Jean Monnet Association, who are our French partners, and we will also be doing work in Poland. We had an event at the Economic Forum in Poland on media freedom and a press conference in September. We will be having events soon in Paris and also in Berlin and also then again in Warsaw. But it's not about holding events. It's about building a network. And you must help us, Emanuele and Filippo, to understand the best way for us to develop this network so that there's a real practical focus on the work that needs to be done to make the coalition of the willing a reality, and that we can learn from each other and we can focus the debate in Parliament, but also most importantly in our communities, on what needs to be done to make the coalition of the willing a reality, to continue to support Ukraine, to believe in the future of Ukraine, and to understand that we cannot disentangle the question of the future of Ukraine and the security of Ukraine from the future of Europe, from our future here in Europe. And we all need to play our part in making that happen, and making that happen soon. So we can inject a focus, a practical focus to this work, and a sense of urgency. I think we will have added value to the public debate. I hope so, and that's what we're trying to do. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Roger. Thank you for your words, and thank you for explaining the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine initiative. I really want to quickly give the floor to Jabi Deralla, who's a journalist and civil activist, and one of the co-promoters of this initiative. I mean, like Roger rightly mentioned, that this work cannot be possible without the support of civil society organizations, think tanks, academia, and this is what we're trying to do. That's why we are all here today, and of course, like Jabier can really talk about his experience as a civil society activist, and he really wants to kind of give his perspective on the initiative and also like on the steps to be taken to make this work. And thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for coming to Rome, first and foremost.
Thank you, Emanuele. It's really wonderful to be in Rome, especially if it's the first time. And happy birthday, but most of all, congratulations on this event. It's really important, and I believe in the power of the few individuals to change things. And this is what I'm witnessing here today, and also the distinguished participants online. Well, Roger spoke about the importance of the parliamentarians and of the parliaments. I'd like to add the voice of the civil society and media for being a journalist and writer myself, and human rights defender for more than 3 decades now. I'm working in the area of the hybrid warfare tactics for a number of years, if not more than a decade. A period that spans, I would say, a certain state of a nap, a long European nap on the hybrid warfare operations that were happening before their eyes, but they didn't really see it. And it is important to finally understand, I'm never going to tire from repeating relentlessly that disinformation and propaganda are tools of the hybrid warfare, and they are deadly tools. Let me give you just one of the thousands of examples that I have in my mind and I have explored in my journalistic and research work. Speaking of parliamentarians, disinformation and propaganda are changing people's minds, because we're not talking about territorial gains only. We're talking about gaining people's minds and hearts, and in all these processes and events. So if parliamentarians listen to their constituencies, they will say, well, we're not supposed to help Ukraine because that's not the priority for our constituencies. It's the social welfare, the medical, or whatever needs that people have. So let's do that. And then the government is also listening to the parliamentarians and the presidents and so on. And they say, well, we can't really go further with supporting freedom, democracy, justice, Ukraine's struggle for peace and sovereignty and so on, and freedom. But how are they so sure that the opinion of the people was not created by propaganda centers, by warfare tactics that are part of a very long game that we were not very ready to see in time? And that's very important for us. That's where the civil society and media come in. We need to work with your constituencies. We need to work with academia, which very often is very légère. I'm not speaking about Centro, Studi, Internazionali, of course, who should serve as a bright example of how think tank community is really getting proactive in the society and making societal changes. And what we need to do is to really support civil society and media to work with people, to work with citizens, and to work with governments and parliamentarians. And this is my idea how to round up this and to be complementary to what Roger said about Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. And of course, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about my experience with the hybrid warfare operations, because that's something that is happening in our living room, on our palms where we hold our mobiles. The front lines are very fluid, and they are everywhere. And that's where we need to be as well, everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you. And last but not least, we're gonna have first, we're very sorry for the absence of the president. Unfortunately, it's, as I said, quite a peculiar day, let's call it that way. So we're gonna have the director of the Centro Studi Internazionali, Francesco Gaudiosi, who's also gonna be with us in the second panel, who's gonna give very brief greetings on behalf of the Centro, and then we're going to start with the discussion straight after, so we can make it kind of on time as we planned. Thank you, Francesco.
Thank you, Emanuele. I guess the microphone is not working. It's fine. This one.
Yeah, this one works.
Okay. So I speak on behalf of the President, since I will use this double presence here today as Vice President and Director, so now I will speak on behalf of the President and later on as the Director. Let's put it this way. Anyway, the President is very sorry. He was about to take a train 10 minutes later than me. I was able to take the train. He had some troubles with strikes in Naples. So thank you to all the participants to this event, in particular to Roger, Sabir. We started this, I remember the first kickoff meeting online, and was very interesting way to start discussing about this ongoing process. And they, as Roger said, this is not just the termination or just the conclusion of discussion, but is an ongoing and open process, while enriching us and also all the people on the many values that the coalition of the willing is giving in its political and also legal, economic, social, as Sabir said, relevant issues. Thank you also to, also on behalf of the President, to Emanuele Richiello for organizing the event today, and also to our members of the Centro Studi Internazionali, in particular Valeria Torta and Angelo Rivolta, that have organized hand in hands with Emanuele the events. So just a final remark, because I will come later on my personal findings on the issues. It is very interesting to see how we are here today with many parliamentarians talking of the coalition of the willing, with UK members and former members of the parliament in an office of the European Union. So it's something that puts together some things and values that, in my humble opinion, I think that we had forgotten in the past, and we seemed very far in terms of values, in terms of Brexit, in terms of all the political differences that unfortunately divided us in the past. But now this coalition seems to be a very first representation of how, for the very first time, we start discussing again of Europe. Of course, not European Union in the strict sense, but of Europe, of defending the European values, defending democracy, defending human rights. So it's also a great opportunity for rediscovering the European values that are common to all of us. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesco. I mean, like, it is not a case that we're here. I'm a little bit biased in that sense because, as you may know, I've been living in London for 10 years. I'm based at the London School of Economics. So, like, I would say a third British because it's a third of my life there. And of course, like, Roger does it, like, with this organization, but, like, this is something we've always been working on, like the importance of the relations between the UK and Ukraine, strategic relations, economic relations, political relations, all of that, like, is something that, like, we really believe in, and I think these are the kind of initiatives that can help strengthen our already, like, very strong relations. So thank you very much for mentioning that. But indeed, it is not a case that we hear today. And thank you for your greetings and introduction. We're gonna start the discussion now. So we're gonna kind of like switch a little bit. Before we do, we're gonna have some remarks. It is the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. And we're going to have remarks from the British Embassy, and in particular we're going to have remarks from Lawrence Donafay, political counselor at the British Embassy. Thank you for being here. And he's here, please let me invite you to the floor. Yes,
sure.
Let's switch. Let me invite you to the floor. Like, he's going to give you some remarks on behalf of the British Embassy. And thank you for being here.
Good. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. And thank you to Centro, Studi, Internazionali and the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine for the opportunity to speak this morning. I'll keep my remarks quite brief because I'm looking forward to hearing from many of the distinguished speakers that are gathered here today. For us, the event comes at a crucial moment. As you'll know, Russia's war in Ukraine has continued for over 3 years now. For over 3 years, Ukrainians have defended their country with courage and fierce determination. They are defending the values that we all share: freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. As Roger said, Ukraine's security is Europe's security, and that's why the UK continues to stand firmly with Ukraine. We cannot allow aggression to go unanswered. If we do, we send a message that violence works and that international rules can be ignored. We fully support the efforts of President Zelensky and President Trump to secure a just and lasting peace. Ukraine has shown it's the party of peace, while Russia continues to obstruct progress and terrorize civilians. As Putin delays serious negotiations, we will not stand by. The UK remains committed to supporting Ukraine's resilience militarily, economically, politically, and helping to lay the foundations for recovery and reconstruction. The Westminster Alliance for Ukraine is a vital platform for dialogue amongst parliamentarians, civil society, and other partners across Europe. It reflects the kind of cooperation that we need to ensure Ukraine's future is secure, democratic, and prosperous. So let's hope today's discussion strengthen our resolve help shape a future where Ukraine is free, stable, and fully supported by its partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you. Thank you really for being here. Let me invite to the floor our distinguished panelists. We are gonna have, first and foremost, we're gonna have two parliamentarians in this panel, and then we're gonna have also the perspective of think tanks and experts. So we are welcoming Emanuele Loperfido, Onorevole Emanuele Loperfido, who's a member of the parliament in Italy, and is a member of the Foreign Affairs Commission. Then we are welcoming Dr. Nona Michelizze, who's the Director for Research at the Istituto Affari Internazionali, whom we thank for being here with us. The importance also of building the networks among think tanks. Then we are very glad to have Professor Ida Caracciolo, who is full professor of international law at the University of Naples Vanvitelli, University of the Campania Vanvitelli, as well as a judge in international court for the law of the sea. Thank you very much for being here. So in the first panel, really the focus that we wanna have is a focus on what is the role of the coalition of the willing in supporting Ukraine. I will start really I really wanted to start from a legal perspective, Professor. So I really wanted to ask you, so in what way do you think the coalition of the willing can work together, and in what way can it be strengthened even further in the support of Ukraine, and what are the practical steps that are already being taken in support of Ukraine? Just to give an overview of the coalition of the willing in support of Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and I wish to thank the organizers for their kind invitation. Well, I'm a jurist, so I have a legal perspective of I wait for the guy pass through the corridor. He was worried about us, maybe the topic. So I have a legal perspective, but I can only give a legal perspective. I don't dare to enter other fields. Well, I think that the decision by foreign states to elaborate a plan to support Ukraine is a fundamental step. Once the consent of states has been reached, the rest is a more technical, legal activities. You know, we need to have, and we had, the consent by Ukraine, which is fundamental because for international law, which is binding and applies to any states, the use, the intervention in a territory of another state is not allowed without the consent of the concerned state. So we have that, which is something important first step. Then we have the consents by the other states. So the coalition of willing is a sort of informal, is based on an informal agreement among the concerned states. Then I think half the work has been made. However, the future is not easy to envisage, in the sense that specifically with reference to the security reassurance force, it will be important to take into consideration many issues. What does it mean, reassurance force, in legal terms? It means to stay there as an interposition force, or to be there with the possibility to intervene in case of use of armed force by the Russian side. In both events, there is the need to define the mandate of the forces on the ground. Are they allowed to defend themselves only, to defend the mission, to defend the country, to defend the borders? We know from the past that, for example, as far as peacekeeping is by the UN is concerned, it is very important to settle all these aspects. It takes a long time. We know that the UN peacekeeping in the past, now UN is living not an easy life. It was necessary to spend 1 year, at least between 6 months and 1 year of discussions and negotiations to define all these elements. So I suppose that the coalition of willing will face these issues, or is still facing at the technical level these issues. These are very important issues. To conclude, I think it is maybe secondary, the relationship with the United Nations, since the United Nations is facing a crisis, so I don't think anything positive in the medium term could sort out from possible contacts with the UN. This is not a problem for the legality of the coalition. And the second point is the cooperation with other regional organizations, which are like the Organization for the Security and Cooperation in Europe, which are specialized to work in Eastern Europe to support democracy, human rights, and so on. But maybe this is something which can be done later on, not to dilute the forces, to be organized and streamlined towards the filling all the legal gaps which must be filled in order to have a fully coalition in full compliance with international law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you for your remarks. This is an interesting take, and it's really like it's very interesting to understand also like the legal perspective and the legal kind of aspects behind the coalition of the willing and behind the support of Ukraine. But we also want to know what is kind of like the parliamentary kind of like perspective on the coalition of the willing, like, and on the support of Ukraine. And so like what is already on? What is happening among parliamentarians, among MPs in Europe? What are the initiatives that, for example, with Italian Parliament are in place? And what's the perspective of course, like we have with us today Onorevole Emanuele Perfido of the Commission for Foreign Affairs in that sense, on the coalition of the willing?
Good morning to everybody. Thanks to Emanuele, and happy birthday again.
Thank you.
You have a fantastic name. And thanks also to Jabir, to Roger, and to Francesco. Thank you for the invitation. It's a day with some trouble, but I made my promise to be here because I really think that this kind of initiative are supporting our main goal. But let me start some meter back, because what I said, I would like to connect with my experience of being member of the OCPA delegation. I'm just coming back from Moldova, and that makes sense what Roger said. In order to be able to support Ukraine, to be really able to give an opportunity we have to be trust as Europe, not only as an allied of countries, but to be an entity, a political entity, with a culture, with an identity. Because when I saw the election in Moldova, I've been in the polling station. The president won 50.5% against the Russian, you can say, big coalition. They doubled the result. That was important, meaning that Moldovan people are more European oriented, but because Europe spent a lot of time to convince them that Europe is the option. That is already a good step. But less than 60% went to vote, meaning that 40% they are not convinced by, obviously not the Russian proposal, but still they are not so convinced about the European direction. We have to work on that. And in order to convince that it is the right option, we have to win the war against Russia and Ukraine. We have to rebuild Ukraine, and that will help also to support the entrance of the Balkan countries in the European Union. So that is the reason why Ukraine is the challenge that we have to win. And there is no other option. If Europe doesn't win in Ukraine, will be the big fail of Europe, and probably there will be another stage of the story. So for that reason, yes, we have to work hard on the culture and the cooperation between university and between the Italian minister to support and invest money and also staff to rebuild the opera in Ukraine, in Odessa, or also to rebuild the big cultural heritage that are damaged by the war. It is also an important step to say Europe is helping you to rebuild your identity that Russia is trying to destroy. If you listen to the war, if you listen to the words that Russia is saying in Ukraine, but also in Moldova, they are saying, you are not Ukrainian, you are Russian. You are not Moldovan, you are Russian. Because it's a cultural fight. And so we have to work hard on that. Before, I mean, not before, but at least at the same pace that we are supporting the Ukrainian army, and also in the same way as we are supporting in the, not only support in terms of army or weapons or technology, even if, because I have been in Kiev, and the technology in drones, the Ukrainians are teaching, they have to teach to us how to build the drones. And so it is correct. We have to, first of all, European parliamentarians, and when I speak about European parliamentarians, I speak about the parliamentarians of the members of the European Union. Everybody, we have to be convinced that we have to work as one in terms of identity and in terms of politics. Because if we say to Moldovans or to Ukraine, please come with us, they have also to understand that Europe, it is also a choice of values, of culture, of democracy, and they have to be stick to that. Because it is not only choosing right or left, or this direction or the other direction. It's to choose another way of thinking. It is where the rule of law is the direction that you have to choose. And if you have some opponent in politics, in Europe you face it by democracy, not with weapon, or not with
Boycott.
Not boycott. And that is something that I saw also in other countries. So really, this reconstruction is a challenge, an opportunity, and need political action, need financial tools, need public and private cooperation. That is the reason why Italy, when they hosted the international conference for the reconstruction of Ukraine, there were more than 2,000 companies, 500 were Italians, there were 40 organizations, there were 100 delegates for the mining. The mining is definitely one of the most important things to do before reconstruction. And we spoke about energy, we spoke about infrastructure, we spoke about schools, we spoke about hospitals. And to make that happen, Italy used Cassa Depositi e Prestiti and CMEST to finance this kind of challenge and opportunity. So there are 500 million euro for that. And also the big company like Leonardo, Enel, Snam, they are involved in it. And then, just to give something concrete, for example, we are supporting an aerospace defense forum in Warsaw that will be held at the end of October in order to connect our companies of that sector with the main aim not only to support Ukraine but also to build the European defense in that delicate area. So, first of all, is a question of being conscious ourselves. That is a question of culture, and is a question of identity as European. That we have to defend our value, and to defend our value, this time we need also to put money, to organize cooperation, to develop our defense, and to have an energetical also politic. Because just to make an example, there are some countries in the Balkan area that are willing to enter in Europe, but they are saying, I cannot pay the gas 3 times higher just because I want to enter in Europe. My people will be killed. So in the meantime, I'm buying from Russia, but because it is the only viable option. Please, Europe and me in buying a cheaper gas, and everybody will be even happier to enter in Europe. So it is a big challenge, but it is the only way that we have to follow in order to come to be the winner of this big challenge. And I really thank you for organizing this kind of event, because it is definitely happy to be more and more convinced that we have to be every day stronger in our challenge. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Emanuele Loperfido. Thank you for his perspective. I mean, like, one key focus really in your speech was cooperation. Like, the importance of European security cooperation is always kind of like an issue of a central key topic in debates at the European Union level. We know that, like, by treaties, it is competence of the member states. It is an intergovernmental kind of like agreement when it comes to defense and foreign policy. But as I said already in the House of Commons, when we have existential threats, we need to make big steps together, and we need to make it and be firm and sure about our decision that we are stronger, and we're not going to be pushed back by new great powers rising and attacking our values and our systems and our political systems and our borders. That's the thing. So really, thank you very much for your perspective, and I really want to continue on this focus on the idea of European security cooperation with Nona Michelice, whom I thank for being here. I'm going to give you the microphone in a second. Do you think we're doing enough in supporting Ukraine? Do you think the coalition of the willing is going to be enough? And do you think the coordination among European states, both within the EU and outside the EU, is effective in supporting Ukraine? And if not, what do you think we still need to do?
Okay. First of all, good afternoon. Thank you very much for organizing this event and for inviting me to contribute to this very interesting panel discussion. When we usually speak about the willing states, we refer to those states who are not bounded to Ukraine by treaty obligations, but still decided to assist and help Ukraine, not for the sake only of Ukraine, but also in order to uphold the principles of international order. But when we speak about those states, we usually imagine post-conflict settlement. We discuss kind of the security guarantees and the role of each country in our imagination. Now, in January, the duration of Russian large-scale war will surpass the duration of Great Patriotic War. This is how Soviets called the Second World War. Let me think this here, in a sense that those who believed to conquer Ukraine in 3 days are now facing the war which will outlast Great Patriotic War. And this is impressive for us, to us, this will be impressive to the Russian citizens. And this tells us also that unfortunately, and here I am pessimistic, we don't really have a luxury to speak about the post-conflict settlement because unfortunately I don't see it is possible to achieve a ceasefire agreement in the near future. And this was made clear by Russia abundantly, lastly in Alaska during this so-called diplomatic waltzer on the red carpet, where finally, maybe we understood that what looks irrational to us, to the Western societies, is perfectly rational to Russia. And what the West, and I understand this psychological fatigue, which is in the West, to accept the idea that risk-benefit calculus is different between the West and Russia. And I think that at this point, Putin decided to fight indefinitely because the war turned the only instrument which guarantees him the power. So when thinking what should the willing states do, I don't think about the post-conflict settlement. I understand that we have to kind of think in advance about this, but still I would rather concentrate on other priorities. There are priorities such guaranteeing air defense to Ukraine. Strengthening air defense means guaranteeing public services in Ukraine, give some guarantees to the battlefield and human life in the countries. So it's now on Europe's responsibility to strengthen its policy in this direction. Second priorities would be acknowledging somehow that US policy towards Ukraine has changed, in a sense that beyond all the rhetorics and the posts on ex-Twitter by President Trump that changed every day, but what seems to be a consolidated policy already from the US side is that the decision is that US will not provide kind of the direct military assistance to Ukraine, but it will rather sell the arms to the Europeans, and then it's up to Europe to be kind of the center of the supply chain to Kiev. So it's up to Europe now to take the whole responsibility for a smooth transfer of arms in order also to avoid duplication in this process. The second priority, the third priority, I think also it's about using how to finance the import of US and not only US arms, and how to finance the arms transfer to Ukraine. And I think here also we have to take into account so-called war fatigue of the public opinion, and in order somehow to calm down these voices who are against supporting Ukraine with the European citizens' money, we should seriously think how to confiscate Russian frozen assets in Europe, and how to use that money in order to finance further the Ukrainian defense. First priority would be to think about our own resilience, our own democracy, because Russia is not fighting only on the battlefield in Ukraine. Russia is fighting against us. So it's fight with cyber attacks, it's with disinformation, and we are now seeing today the airport in Munich is closed because of drones over the sky. So we see all these drone incursions. So reinforcing our resilience in security. Defense means also contributing to Ukrainian defense. And final priority on this way of what should the willing state do is somehow recognizing Ukraine's increasing role in European security. Ukraine has been presenting as a recipient countries. Always, it was always like this. Also, when speaking about the NATO, Ukraine was presented as a recipient countries of European security. With what happened with the drones in incursion, and now seeing Ukraine signing the agreements with Poland, and then coming to Denmark, Ukrainian soldiers, in order to teach to the Danish soldiers how to shut down the drones, I think that we have to change also narrative in this direction. To say to the people that Ukrainians are contributors, and the principal point already to the European security architecture, and reinforce this idea when it will come also about evaluating whether Ukraine is evaluated to the NATO, or actually, in past we used to say it is risky to take Ukraine into NATO because we risk the war with Russia. First of all, we are already in the war with Russia without taking Ukraine in the NATO, but now seeing Ukraine with all its military experience, we have really to evaluate and understand that it is maybe more in our interest now having Ukraine in the NATO rather than Ukraine's interest to enter into the NATO. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is an extremely interesting perspective. It is indeed like a quite topical debate, the entering the Ukraine into the EU and NATO. You mentioned quite a few interesting things. I really want to link to our next speaker, who's online. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it due to the strikes. Of course, I'm talking about General Vincenzo Camporini, who was Capo di Stato Maggiore in Italy, and is today with us online. Thank you very much for being with us anyway, despite the strike, and I'm sorry for what happened like this morning. And at one point you mentioned kind of like building a common capability or cooperation, and I really want to hear the general's perspective on whether he thinks such a capability can be built in the near future, or whether you think like cooperation should happen at state-by-state kind of perspective, or whether you think it is already possible to kind of like reason as a common security actor when we speak of Ukraine. Welcome, General Vincenzo Camporini. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Okay. Sorry for not being able to join you this morning, but I'm living in a part of the town which requires public transport to be available fully, and so I decided to stay home, but to be available to be connected. Very interesting question, because it has to do not only with the present situation and the operation, but with the future developments. And we have heard of the Danish model as a possible way to increase the cooperation and the capabilities of the Ukrainian armed forces to sustain the battle with the Russians. I think this is a very interesting approach. We all are aware of the technological skill of the Ukrainian population since the times of the Soviet Union. Ukraine was one of the main centers for developing technology, and so the capabilities are in place. For these capabilities to become real assets, you need to implement a policy of financial sustainment and of industrial sustainment. And this is what some countries are doing. Not only Denmark, others like Germany, and it's for sure a significant feature of the support to be given to Ukraine, because it has a wider perspective in terms of what will happen in the future times, even if the problem with Russia would be in a way solved. I do not know how it will be solved, but for sure it cannot last forever. But nevertheless, when this will happen, then we will have already established a network of cooperation between European countries and Ukraine in terms of technology and technology transfer, which will be absolutely crucial, vital, and extremely useful also for the capabilities of our armed forces. We have to learn a lot from Ukraine, not only from the technical point of view, but also from the logistics and from the technology point of view. Whether this can be done in an environment which goes beyond the national perspective, well, I am at the moment a little bit skeptical, because I do not see a common effort to go into this direction. National approaches are improving, are showing their value, but frankly speaking, I have some difficulties in perceiving a common effort in this field. Also because, this is very sad, in Europe we have an enormous problem in keeping together our policy for industrial development in the field of defense. Every day we try to do something more, but every day we see that many initiatives are either failing or in difficulties. Just to let me quote the example of the Euromail. Euromail, you know, it's a common effort between France, Italy, Germany, and Spain to produce remotely piloted aircraft of the top generation. It is a very huge effort, program of industrial system, but every day we hear of the difficulties and of some doubts in some capitals to go ahead. The same thing happens for the future combat-air system, which is a joint initiative between France, Germany, and Spain. And in these very few days, we hear about some serious progress to go on with its cooperation. So having such a fragmented industrial panorama in Europe to imagine a cooperation between Ukraine and Europe as such is quite difficult. Quite difficult, also because we have, we have one of the problems is the different approaches of each country towards the concept of exporting military technology. Each country has its own regulation, which are not compatible between each other, and this is an extremely difficult subject to be faced because the sensitivities of the public opinion on this issue are very high, and also take into account different situations. For instance, in Italy, excuse me. The law prohibits to provide this type of support with a country which is at war. And it is not by fault of Ukraine, but Ukraine is at war. So we have some serious problems because any effort that could be challenged before a court with significant consequences. So my answer to your very interesting question is that we have to proceed nationally, and of course this national contribution, this national approach must be coordinated in an environment which cannot be the European Union. The environment of the nations which are the famous coalition of the willing is an area, but not only that. If we coordinate bilaterally, multilaterally, this type of effort, we can obtain a good result without the involvement of the institution of the European Union, which again, as I said, can be a very difficult path.
Thank you very much, General. Thank you for your contribution, and of course, this is the way the European Union and over. So, like contributing among European states also mean like contributing non-EU members, and this is like certainly something that we need to work on, and coordination is fundamental for this to happen. I would like to really thank all the panelists of this first panel. Your contributions have been extremely thoughtful, extremely thought-provoking. Really, thank you very much, and I'm sorry if we cannot continue, but we have time constraints. So a round of applause for our panelists. And I would like to move on to the second panel. And if we manage and we are on time, we'll try to finish at 20 past maximum, because I know we all have personal commitments and work commitments. So thank you to Professor Rita Caracciolo, thank you to Onorevole Emanuele Perfido, thank you to Nonna Michelizze, and thank you to General Vincenzo Camporini for being with us on this first panel. Let me welcome the second panel. We're going to have Senator Sensi with us, again Francesco Gaudiosi, Director of the Centro Studi Internazionali, Francesco Tufarelli, who's Director General at the Presidency of the Council of Ministers, and we have online Professor Bertrin, who's the Director of the Jean Monnet Association, our French partner. Thanks to all of you again who have been with us, and also to who's following us online, and our record of the event. Shall we start with the second panel? Great. Let me quickly get into it. So like the second kind of like focus is going to be on the economic, social, and cultural dimension of what is going to happen after the conflict. We had like quite a strong statement in that sense. We kind of like heard the idea that like this is not happening anytime soon. There's no chance to reach a settlement anytime soon. We've seen it with recent events, with recent developments, I think supporting Ukraine it also means that we need to find like diplomatic solutions to make this happen somehow sooner than later. Let me start with the parliamentary perspective. Let me start with the parliamentary perspective. So, how do you think we can move on from a conflict scenario to a post-conflict scenario, and what actions are being made at the parliamentary level, and what is the plan after the conflict is done? Can you please, Senator Sensi, can you give us like the parliamentary perspective on that?
Thank you, Emanuele. Thank you, all of you, of course. And thank you. Let me mention Gennaro Migliore, who could not be here, but I got my invitation from him. So thank you for this rare opportunity to discussion and dialogue between us. I'm not a gifted speaker, so I just scribbled down some notes to foster me and to sustain me. So, and just I want to underscore a few points close to my heart and my commitment. First one, Emanuele, Russia's aggressions against Ukraine is not since not just 3 years, but 11 years. It's a European war. And that risks becoming a world war. Maybe it's right now a world war. China and North Korea and the United States and so on. But and everybody here inside this room perceive it as an attack on Europe and each of our countries and each of us. This fact has urgent consequences. I'm on Nonna's side, I'm on Dr. Micheli's side about, okay, we'll have to rebuild and reconstruct, but please close our sky, please give on to with arms and so on. That's a very fashionable English term I love, is consequential. And we have to be consequential, and among the consequences that the European war forces us to draw, there are several I would like to share. The first, the shared goal of each of us is for peace. Peace to be returned to Ukraine and to Ukrainian people. For Ukrainian people to be able to live their lives freely and in democracy and in peace, and for Russia to leave the land that belongs to them, that belongs to Ukrainian people. Yeah, Krozana Solnce, the Ukrainian anthem, just say, the enemies will disappear like you in the sun. Is it possible? Difficult. Is it probable? Maybe not. Is it credible? It seems more like a dream, perhaps, an illusion, but still. Is it necessary? Yes, it is. Is it right? Yes, it is, of course. Is it a duty, a responsibility, a bond for each one of us? Yes, it is. Everything within our power and beyond to achieve this goal, peace for Ukrainian people, their land, their democracy, which is ours. All this not only can be done, this must be done. Second, we often complain about what Europe, or rather the European Union, rather the European institutions, has failed to do for Ukraine. Of course, too slow, too divided, too bureaucratic, too fragmented, too distant and remote. It's okay. And no one else still recalls us. But there we must also reaffirm that without Europe, this battle wouldn't have been, it would not be possible at all. And this is part of my heartfelt thanks to Roger and to Westminster Alliance for Ukraine and for all your commitments on this. So let's hold on to this Europe. Teniamocela stretta. Let's make it grow even more deeper, more faster, but let's push it to do more for Ukraine, for Georgia, tomorrow there will be a massive rally in Tbilisi and you know, and everywhere in the world for the Georgian community. We don't know what will happen. We don't know what will happen. For Belarus, for Moldova, Emanuele Perfido just came from there. For all those European countries who felt the most the Russian grip on their democracy and so on. And, you know, being conscious that we have the luxury of a freedom and democracy kind of environment, but environment that is still, you know, is going to vanish, is going to erode day by day our democracy and our freedoms, connected with what's happening in Ukraine and so on. I conclude, I've never liked coalitions of the willing because I cannot resign myself to willpower alone in the face of the threat we are facing. But because of the fact we are in times of feeble passions, and we just left this world, and we are now in a world reopening the doors to war, not only in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in the Far East, in Africa, and Sudan, and so on. Willpower is the virtue we can afford now. If it had not been for the decision to bring together the most resilient countries to defend Ukraine, economy, military, arms, politics, culture, as Roger said, we would all be weaker, more exposed, more fragile, more vulnerable, and more alone today. I skipped the part against the Italian government because it would be fair to Emanuele, but
Also,
we have
the Director General.
Yeah, with the Director General. It's part of the institution, so he could stand it. But the coalition, of course, right now is the role of vanguard, of breach. To an ally, we have to say, who would like to leave us to our fate? I'm talking about the United States, of course, and who never misses an opportunity and a chance to demonstrate and to show his hostility toward Europe. And the very idea of the West, you know, that has united us for decades, let me say for centuries. So we cannot resign ourselves to solitude, ours and that of Ukrainian people. We have to build on it. So let's have Ukraine in the NATO. Let's have Ukraine in the EU. Let's keep on with this path. We cannot resign ourselves to the so-called fatigue. Nona said very well that Ukrainian people feel, certainly not us. We don't have to rush to subway stations because of the buzz of the drones. We don't have to fear, you know, maybe in the Munich airport or in Denmark and so on for buzzing of drones. But it's coming for us. It's coming to us too. And if it has arrived in Ukraine, it means it has arrived to us. There are no kilometers, there is no room or space that can excuse or protect us or defend us right now. For 11 years, this selfish fairy tale for all of us is over. The front line, as Jamil just said, is everywhere, is in our palms. It's very physical. It's very, you know, about our bodies, about our everyday lives. It's not something happening to someone else. Now it's time today to be together, to grow together, not only to give help, but to receive help from the Ukraine, contributor kind of thing we just hear, as they are doing with drones and defense, and you know, on the military side, an area which we are still stuck, looking back. We are still outdated, slow. So we are learning from what they suffer, for how they fight. So it's not only anymore the courage, it's not only the brave, it's, you know, kind of very material things. I'm therefore, and I'm going to conclude, for the leadership shown by the coalition. But, my friends here, we are only at the beginning, unfortunately. We are only at the beginning, and so we need to know this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for reminding us about Gennaro Migliore, who was rightly supposed to be like the moderator. I mean, like, too many things happened today, so I forgot to mention, unfortunately, he's not here due to personal family reasons. Thank you for reminding us. And just a second quick comment. Funny thing, like, Senator told me, I don't think I'm gonna make. I don't know if I want to make a comment in English because
Yeah,
I'm worried about my English. But his accent is better than mine, and I've lived for 10 years in the UK.
But I don't know what I've said.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. He was being too humble. Amazing accent, by the way. And thank you for your contribution. We did a brief mention on the Italian position and the kind of like the Italian government position. Of course, like we're doing this in Italy, we could not have this conversation without having like the position of the Italian government, and we have here the Director General at the Presidency of the Council of Ministers, and who's gonna kind of like give his perspective on what Italy is doing and in terms of like making this happen, as Senator rightly mentions. How can we make this happen? What do you think? What are the steps that should be taken to reach a settlement at one point in Ukraine?
But first of all, I would like to express my satisfaction for having had the opportunity to support this important seminar with many friends, with Roger, with Emanuele, and Filippo, and with Antonio and Monica that support me in the organization of the think tank La Parabola and of the magazine Europe 2028. I think in the next number of the magazine we have focus about this meeting, about this situation. I think that it's very important. You know that it's impossible for me to say about the position of Italian government now, because I say with my magazine, my think tank, I work with the Italian government, but now I'm not in charge with the European Department of Political Affairs, and I write just 3 or 4 ideas, and it's better for you that I read, because my English is terrible. It's not like for another. But this is better for me, but it's better for you. Okay, honestly, today we struggle to see the end of this war. It's very difficult. The positions are really very distant, and there is no feeling of a serious negotiation having begun. We clearly confirm our support with Italy for Ukraine, the victim of absolutely unjustified aggression. However, it's important to focus on reconstruction now. I believe that the European Union will have to play a very important role in this regard for various reasons. Reconstruction is not just economic cooperation, but above all political and social. It will be important to take into account who has really supported Ukraine's reason in recent years. Reconstruction has in fact a very important effect of the target population. It is not possible to make interventions that are not in line with the Ukrainian government. It is not possible to impose action that the population considers hostile. In recent years, though the sanctions imposed on the Russian government right away and through the military had offered to the Ukrainian government, Europe has carried out a very current action. All this is perfectly clear to Ukrainian people, and I think the Ukrainian government too. Ukrainian ministers have also been frequently involved in meetings of the European Council of Ministers. When we have the European Council of the European Union, the Ministers of Ukraine are present during the meeting. When I was General Director in European Affairs, I have many meetings with Minister of the other country of Europe and with the Ukrainian Minister. They had not a merely military character, but was truly inclusive in the Union choices. We know well the Ukrainian entry into the European Union is absolutely premature, and today we are not even able to draw up a credible roadmap. This is true. It's not possible now to have a roadmap, because for a country in the war is impossible said about this. However, this does not prevent us from studying all the possibilities of current and future collaboration. With our commitment, we have been much more consistent than many others, and we never asked for anything in return. This is very important. Nothing in return for Europe. For the others, I don't know. It's not possible to major interventions that are not. No, this is right. This is stupid thing. There are not rules of the European Union when it acts in support of NLU countries. We must also recognize that this situation highlighted the need to address the strategic autonomy of the European Union. Finding ourselves suddenly in the middle of the war was an experience now forgotten in Europe for my father too. In those days, we are celebrating the conference of the future of Europe. You remember, Emanuele? And until there were very few contributions on the need for a common European. No one speak about the Europe defense of Eastern politics because no one interested in this. Today, the need of common defense and protection of critical entities is the main point of our agenda. The post-war intervention in Ukraine should be studied from these perspectives. The contribution of others is welcome, but Europe must be the leader of the operation, and I think the Ukrainian knows this very well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you to Francesco, and he rightly points out that, of course, he's also here on behalf of as Roger rightly mentioned, the other supporters of this initiative, both the Adenauer Foundation and the Centro Studi La Parabola, as Roger mentioned, and in particular the Europa 2028, Europe 2028 magazine, with which we have a collaboration, and with which we've been very happy to collaborate in past years, and also in the last issue.
And the presentation,
Carpaths, and a presentation as well, exactly. So thank you very much for your contribution. I really want to kind of link the last two comments to you, Francesco. And so there is two issues. First, we said it is a European conflict. It's not just a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. It's as such, it's way more complex. We've seen the kind of limits we have in terms of coordination, in terms of security cooperation, and so on. I really want to hear your perspective on how we can eventually achieve a settlement on this conflict, and what's your take on what is going to happen in the upcoming months, and do you think it is really an illusion to speak of a post-conflict reconstruction at this point, or you think it is important to start thinking about it? Yes, of course.
Thank you, Emanuele. Thank you for your questions. Absolutely, I think that it's possible to speak of post-conflict reconstruction, of course, in the long-term run, because I would like also to focus in the short-term run before speaking, for example, on the issues related to the membership of Ukraine to European Union, NATO. I will be very cautious on these points. But before speaking of all these issues, it would be interesting, for example, to see the relationship between the present relationship between NATO and the coalition of the willing, because they are two very distinct instruments, one a treaty-based international organization, the other an ad hoc interstate arrangement devoid of institutional autonomy, but they may interact in the present time and also in the field of post-conflict reconstruction, particularly in light of the recent developments of NATO after the recent meeting of the heads of states and government in the Hague summit last July. NATO, as we all know, is an international organization in the strict sense, so as treaty-established organs, collective decision-making through the North Atlantic Council, but also the annual meeting of the head of states and government, and as a recognized legal personality. The coalition of the willing, by contrast, is a grouping of 31 states which have voluntarily associated themselves with the objective of providing enhanced support to Ukraine, including, as publicly announced, the possible establishment of a peacekeeping or reassurance force, as Professor Caracciolo said, to be deployed upon the conclusion of a comprehensive ceasefire. 26 of those states have already expressed their readiness to contribute troops or assets to such a mission. This coalition is therefore a political construct among sovereign states. It lacks autonomous personality and its actions are attributable exclusively to its members. The coexistence of these two frameworks raises delicate legal questions. The first one concerns attribution of responsibility. When NATO, acting under a decision of the North Atlantic Council, employs its structure or resources, the acts are attributable to NATO as an international organization. Where instead states act through the coalition without NATO mandate or assets, the legal responsibility lies with those states alone. This distinction is not merely theoretical. It determines which accountability mechanisms apply, which obligations under international law are engaged, and who may be held responsible before third parties. The second question concerns legitimacy. NATO decisions embody the collective will of the allies expressed through consensus. A coalition decision reflects only the will of its participants. Although the coalition may act with greater speed and flexibility, it cannot be regarded as equivalent to NATO. My point here is that the risk of external confusion, the perception of the coalition as NATO by another name, must be countered by clear legal demarcation, lest reputational and legal ambiguities arise. The third question concerns resources and financing. The ACT Summit established the 5% framework requiring by 2035 at least 3.5% of GDP for core defense for the member states and up to 1.5% for defense and security-related expenditure. Assistance to Ukraine, including certain reconstruction measures, may be included within this 1.5% category. Inevitably, a significant part of such assistance will be delivered through the coalition, or could be even delivered through the coalition. This circumstance creates a structural interconnection. While NATO politically recognizes this expenditure within its burden-sharing metric, they remain in law action of individual states, unless and until a NATO mandate is issued. The possibility of double counting, of blurred attribution, and of inconsistent reporting is therefore a concrete risk. A practical example may illustrate the point. For example, with regard to energy infrastructure, as Honorable Loperfido said before. Should a state finance through the coalition the reconstruction of energy infrastructure in Ukraine, such expenditure may be reported under the 1.5% envelope. NATO will politically recognize the contribution. Legally, however, the act remains attributable to the state, not to NATO. Consequently, NATO's act of political recognition does not displace or supersede the legal regime concerning national parliamentary authorization, for example, or even other fundamental legal regimes such as the EU law or the WTO procurement law. Nevertheless, the coalition possesses undeniable utility. It enables rapid mobilization of resources, deployment of specialized capacities, and targeted responses. Properly framed, it may complement NATO rather than compete with it. Yet, complementarity requires discipline. Without it, the coalition risks becoming a grey zone, exploited alternatively as NATO or as a mere state grouping, depending on convenience. Accordingly, three recommendations are advanced. First, NATO should adopt precise technical criteria defining which coalition-delivered expenditures may legitimately be reported under the 1.5% category. Second, whenever such expenditures are claimed, states should submit a standard declaration or something similar, indicating the legal basis of the activity, the role of NATO's assets, the Ukrainian counterpart, and an auditable trail to prevent any duplication. Third, institutional attribution to NATO must remain conditional upon a formal mandate of the North Atlantic Council. Absent such authorization, responsibility continues to reside with the participating states. In conclusion, NATO and the coalition of the willing are distinct yet interconnected. NATO offers the treaty-based legitimacy and the financial framework. The coalition provides operation flexibility and immediacy. The challenge is to bind them together without obscuring their legal boundaries. If the alliance coupled its political ambition with clear criteria for coalition spending, transparent reporting requirement, and strict attribution rules, then political pledges will be transformed into accountable and sustainable reconstruction efforts for Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Francesco, for your contribution. And really, following these lines, I don't want to kind of change the topic. So I really want to move on to Professor Bertrin, who's online with us. Can we? Yes. Do you also agree, Professor, that as we stand, it is an illusion to speak of post-conflict reconstruction? And what do you think the coalition of the willing should do? Following the lines of the previous comments. What's your take on that? Thank you for being with us, by the way, Professor.
Bonjour. Thank you for the invitation. I want to underline an aspect that a lot of persons forgot. It's the post-trauma syndrome. We think that 30% of Ukrainian people have a post-trauma syndrome, 30% of the people. And in the army, more than 30%, as you can understand. When the war will finish, and we don't know exactly when, because the situation is very hard on the front, and internationally also with the provocation of Russia in Europe. When the war will end, we will have, with the reconstruction of Ukraine, to take care and to help Ukraine to manage all those post-trauma syndrome for civilian and military people. We will have also to manage the refugees who are in Europe and how they can come back to Ukraine, what will we propose for them in Ukraine. As you know, I spent 10 years in Ukraine, in Kiev. I am professor of Ukrainian University. I teach online because of the war. And a lot of my friends say to me that we must underline this big crisis, psychological crisis in Ukraine. A lot of my friends in Kiev, because of this large-scale invasion now, 3 years and a half, a lot of them, they are depressed. They were very motivated at the beginning of the war, but now they are depressed. We are talking about reconstruction, but a lot of young people want to leave the country. I remember one of my former students say to me, I will not wait 2, 3 years or 10 years. I want to have my happiness, my future now. Then this war has a big impact on the psychology of the people of Ukraine. Nobody in Europe really take care about that. But if we want to reconstruct Ukraine, we will have also to take care about this post-trauma syndrome and to help concretely those people to believe again in the future of their country, to believe again in the peace. When I speak with my friend in the University of Dnipro, our students' house were destroyed. Some house of our professor are destroyed. Can you imagine the impact on the psychology of our student and professor? What we can do concretely, not only investment, not only reconstruction, not only NATO member or EU member, we will have a big work with psychologists to help those people to live and believe again in peace and in quite a nice life. No reconstruction without reconstruction of people. No reconstruction without a reconstruction of military people. And that's my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Levin. Thank you very much for being with us from Paris. Well, we've come to, I would say, given the time constraints, I think we've come to a conclusion. I would have loved to continue this conversation with both panelists, to be honest. Like this was an amazing, really debate. If it wasn't for the day today, but I would have kept on going for another while. But we will need to stop here. Like you're fine with it, also because it's 1/2 past. I promised you we would have finished at 20 past. So it's the Italian way. Welcome to Rome, I would say. I was supposed to conclude. I'll just take 30 seconds, and then I really want to leave the floor to Roger for his vote of thanks. A very British thing to do. British way to call it, which is our way to say conclusions, but we love it. We call it so. Like let's call it vote of thanks. 30 seconds. I really want to stress something that I've already said, and something that I said also in London, and that I try to kind of like mention in my papers and in my blog contribution as well. There is a scientific literature on that as well. So like, what are the consequences of existential threats and security threats? And there's a critical literature saying that like we need to be careful not to securitize too much and to militarize too much, because that could have like negative consequences. But I think we are at a time that I called a time of international reordering. I think what is happening in Ukraine is symbolically an event that calls and that is showing, highlights an international reordering of the world system. And I think in this process, we cannot stay and just look without doing anything, without trying to kind of like make some actions. And I really want to conclude this event. This was my plan, but I'll just, this is kind of like a tenth of what I wanted to say. I really want to conclude it like using Mario Draghi's word. Let's do something. I don't know what, but let's do something. Because we cannot stay and do nothing. Just let's do something, and let's defend what we have always fought for, which is democracy, freedom, and the system we believe in. This is what we stand for, and I think that we need to do something. So on that note, I really want to give the floor to Roger, who's gonna conclude this event and give us the vote of thanks and also explain what is gonna happen next. Thank you very much for everyone. Gabriel.
Well, thank you, Emanuele, and it will be really very brief. First of all, thank you to all our speakers. I really feel we've had some fantastic contributions. I mean, I personally have learned so much from everything that each person has said, and we've seen it from so many different aspects. We've identified so many barriers, so many obstacles, but also so many jobs that need to be done. There's not time to comment on each person individually, but what we will want to do is follow up with you individually, and perhaps on our podcast, Eyes of Democracy podcast, and Francesca very kindly said it's going to have an article in Europa 2028 magazine, and also on the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine section of the Defending Democracy website, and through articles. We do want to expand on the discussion today and all of the individual contributions that have been made that are very, very rich. And I also want to thank once again Centro, Studi, Internazionali, Francesco, Emanuele, Europa 2028, Konrad Adenauer Foundation, the European Parliament, for all of your support to make this such an important and special event for our growing alliance, our growing network of politicians and journalists and others also in the cultural sector and civil society. And perhaps I just leave on this. I mean, we heard, Nino said, we must guard from illusions. We mustn't pretend in our work that we know when the conflict is going to come to an end. We don't. But as we also heard from the General, it's not going to last forever. Someday it will come to an end. And what I think we absolutely need to be sure of, and the commitment is here today, that our preparations for when the conflict ends do not last forever. We need to cooperate, and we need to start preparing for that now, even though we don't know when it is going to end. We mustn't abandon this work. We mustn't abandon our commitment. We must be better prepared. And above all, as we heard from Olivier at the end, we must never abandon the Ukrainian people. Yeah. Because they, like us, have freedom, the love of freedom and the rule of law and democracy in their hearts. And we must stand with them to defend their future and ours. And may it be a better future, a future where they can heal, where they can prosper, where they can live in freedom and in peace, and where life in Ukraine in the future will be so prosperous and attractive that the young people who currently are traumatized and want to leave decide that their future is a bright one, is an enjoyable one, is a secure and a prosperous one, and that they will stay there and we will visit them, and we will be part perhaps of a growing European Union and a Europe that remains safe for freedom and democracy for them and for us. So thank you very much indeed, and we'll see you at the next event, I hope.
Thank you. Thank you. Bene. Grazie a tutti.
Sì, veloce puoi scrivere. Per questo, però così